Welcome back to the VPartySports podcast for this Friday afternoon. I'm Vasu VParty. You can reach me at VPartySports on Twitter and Instagram, as well as on Facebook and YouTube at Vasu VParty. Don't forget, on Saturday, we'll be back. Saturday and Sunday, we'll be back 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific time, with replays to follow. A full preview of the divisional weekend. 4 big games this weekend. The 4 winners looking to get to the conference championship game for 2 games next weekend, next Sunday. Of course, the NBA and NHL will go on Saturday as well, too. And the NCAA, a full conference slate all day Saturday, wall-to-wall, noon Eastern until about midnight Eastern in terms of games going all day, every conference involved. The Daily Post comes out at 11 a.m. Eastern. And if you're interested in sponsorships, contact me directly through YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter as well. You can do that at VPartySports. The Daily Post will come out at 11 a.m. Eastern Saturday and Sunday. And also you can catch the replays up until tip-offs and kickoffs on the podcast for any information that you've missed along. All right, my thanks to Darren Smith, covering the Kansas City Chiefs, Jacksonville Jaguars for ESPN Radio Kansas City, and also his own social media podcast as well, too. Appreciate his time. We'll delve into the NFL in a little bit here, a little bit more detail before the games start tomorrow. But right now, we're going to hit the recap of the NBA last night. What a night it was for the NBA. The Bulls and Pistons played in Paris last night. All right, last night, Paris time. It was about noontime, West Coast time here. Zach LaVine had 30 points for the Chicago Bulls as they swallowed up the Detroit Pistons, 126-108. Zach LaVine had 30. The Bulls covered the 7. They stayed under the total of 236. So they get the win. It counts as a regular season game. And that puts the Bulls right there in the middle of the playoff standings. They are now in 10th place. They're 21-24. Meanwhile, Detroit last in the East at 12-36. They're without a lot of players, but the Bulls had 30 from LaVine. And they also had, let's see if I got this right, DeMar DeRozan had a pretty good game too. I watched it yesterday. He had 26. And then Derek Jones Jr. off the bench had 12. Kobe White hit a couple big threes to give them 10. And then 13 for Dosunmu, who's come out to be very well, a very good player from the University of Illinois. So the Bulls 126-108 over the Pistons. How about the game last night in Boston? It was billed as a rematch. The Warriors, very undermanned when Boston came out to Oakland back in December. They beat them up and beat them up good. Jason Tatum was very much off his game in Oakland as the Warriors pretty much dominated that game. Well, this time the Celtics come back from 9 points down in the fourth quarter. They tie the game up on a Jaylen Brown 3 to send it to overtime. Make sure it was a Jaylen Brown 3. I believe it was. I want to say it was a Jaylen Brown 3. And that's what I'm going to find out right now. A Jaylen Brown 3 to tie it at 106. Steph Curry missed a shot toward the end, and the game ended up going to overtime. And in overtime, the Celtics had a chance to cover. They were a 7-point favorite. The line started out at 6.5. It got up to 121-113 after Jason Tatum's 2 free throws. But the Celtics got off to a roll. They had 2 threes. Tatum hit 1 and Brown hit 1, or Michael Horford hit 1. Jaylen Brown hit a running 9-footer that gave them the lead 112-111, a lead they would never relinquish. That was at the 2:23 mark. Tatum hits the 26-footer for a 7-point lead. And then before you know it, they're up 8 with 38 seconds to go. And then Al Horford commits an egregious shooting foul on Andrew Wiggins. Boston challenged it. Wiggins only made 2 of 3 free throws, but he got it to 6. And then all of a sudden, Marcus Smart had a bad pass. DiVincenzo hits a 26-footer, and the game's a 3-point game with 30 seconds to go. Now you don't have to foul. And now if you've got the 7 points like I do, pretty much assured that they're not going to be able to get to 7 as long as the clock runs down. Celtics miss a shot. Jordan Poole misses a 45-footer. Ball game over 121-118. The game did go over, I believe. No, it still stayed under 240, I think, was the total. 241.5. So even with overtime, it did not go over. But the Celtics did not cover the 6.5 or the 7, depending on what you had. I had the Warriors last night. If you had me on best bets, then you took the Warriors last night at +7. You end up getting the win. All right. Jordan Poole, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, before he fouled out, all combined for 77 points. Jason Tatum was big after the game that he had in San Francisco. Almost said Oakland. In San Francisco nearly a month ago, where he did not play very well at all. In fact, in that game, they lost 123-107. Jason Tatum only had 18 points on 6 of 21 shooting. So this game, he played well. He had 34 for Tatum on 9 of 27 shooting, 4 of 13 from 3. So not a great shooting game, but he did come up with 34 points. He did have 19 rebounds and 6 assists as well. 121-118, the final score for the Warriors and the Celtics. Golden State comes home to play Brooklyn on Sunday night. Actually, they've got Cleveland tonight, and then they come home to play Brooklyn on Sunday night. We'll get to Brooklyn in a second. The Celtics, meanwhile, have a game Saturday. They're going to be 5 o'clock in the afternoon in Toronto against the Toronto Raptors, and then I don't think they play Sunday at all. They do not. The next time they play after that will be on Monday. They'll go to Orlando. So that's what happened in Boston last night, 121-118 final score. All right. The T-Wolves make an incredible comeback in the fourth quarter behind D'Angelo Russell's 16-point fourth quarter, 128-106 over Toronto. The Timberwolves outscored Toronto by 10 points in the fourth quarter. They were down by 6, by 4, by 10, by 8 after 3 quarters before they got on the 27-17 run in the fourth quarter. They actually played defense in the fourth quarter because after 3 quarters, the game was 68-74-142. The game was totaled at 210 points after 3 quarters. The over-under in the game was 223. The Raptors ended up at a 4-point favorite, but Minnesota comes back, not only covers the spread, they win the game outright on 2 free throws, on a jump shot, actually. It was 2 free throws by D'Angelo Russell to give them the 2-point lead on the foul, and then the Raptors had a coach's challenge on a play. They were charged with the timeout. The end of the game happened, 128-126 in favor of Minnesota. That puts Toronto out of the playoff spot. They're 11th right now. They're 2 games back of the Bulls at 20 and 26. Minnesota in the 7th spot, 23 and 24. That West is all bunched up. The Suns hand the Nets another loss. No Kevin Durant. No win for the Nets. 117-112. Phoenix wins. Building bridges is Mikal, 28 points for Mikal Bridges. The Nets score 15 points more than the Suns in the fourth. They outscored them by 15 in the fourth to make this a 5-point game. They were down by 20 after 3 quarters. 20 points after 3 quarters, and make a valiant effort to come back, but is not enough. 117-112. Kyrie Irving had 30 for the Nets. Ben Simmons had 7. He came back after injury. But Mikal Bridges, as we said, he's been the big scorer for them now. He's probably the best shooter, 28 for him. DeAndre Ayton had 24. Still without Chris Paul, still without Devin Booker. So Bridges and Ayton have to step up. And right now, they are stepping up, and they are right there in the Western Conference logjam right now. They're just outside of the 10th spot at 22 and 24, 15 and 7 at home, 8-0 in the division. This one against Brooklyn out of division. So the Suns hand the Nets another loss. The Nets now in 4th place, 27 and 17, 1 game back of Milwaukee and Philadelphia in the loss column. Joel Embiid had 32 points for the Philadelphia 76ers. They go into Portland and beat up the Trailblazers 105-95. As I take a look at it, Embiid 32, Tyrone Maxey 15 off the bench. James Harden had 16. Portland got 25 as usual from Lillard. Jeremy Grant had 24, but nobody else did anything for them. Nurkic only had 4, 10 off the bench for Nasir Little, but they only scored 95 points. This game was totaled at 235, ended up going down to 233.5, nowhere near the total in Philadelphia, a 1.5-point favorite in the game they covered. So in the NBA last night, 2 favorites, 3 underdogs win. 1 under, 2 unders, 1 over, 2 over, 3 under, 2 overs and 3 unders for the NBA on Thursday as well too. So a lot of high totals. Now, as far as selections go, this week I am 9-4 this week in the NBA, 6-3 in hockey. The one NFL game was Tampa Bay on Monday night, but I'm 5-1 in the playoff round so far in the NFL. Don't forget the Best Bet segment comes up this afternoon at 3 o'clock Pacific time on the Daily Post. I'll have a special Best Bet for you at the end of this podcast as well, too. All right, we come back. We'll talk a little college basketball. We'll talk a little hockey. We'll give you the Best Bet segment, and we'll say goodbye for this Friday as we preview and get ready for a big weekend of NFL football, NCAA basketball, wall-to-wall conference play, the NBA, and the NHL. Back in 30 seconds, I'm Vasi Vadaparty. This is the VPartySports podcast for this Friday afternoon. Welcome back to the VPartySports podcast for this Friday. Vasu Vadaparty here with you. We recapped, thanks to Darren Smith for coming on from ESPN Radio Kansas City. The NFL Divisional playoffs start this weekend. Don't forget, on Saturday and Sunday, I'll be with you here on the podcast with replays after 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. The Divisional weekend, Chiefs, Jaguars, the Eagles and Giants for the third time this year. The Bills and Bengals will play the first game on Sunday, and then the 49ers and Cowboys. Me living in the Bay Area, those games in the 90s, they were big deals in the 90s, not only for the NFL, but also for the Bay Area and for the Dallas crowds as well, too. The Daily Post will be at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. If you're interested in sponsorships, contact me directly. Your sports bar, your restaurants, whatever your business is, we'll be able to help you a little bit. Contact directly on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Thanks to everybody for your comments on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. Really appreciate it for the show. You can always reach me at VPartySports, the podcast with Vasi Vadaparty, the VPartySports podcast. All right, one more thing about the NBA before we forget. We're going to go into college real quick, but I wanted to give you the lines for the NBA. Of course, you see the ticker at the bottom. You have all the games for today going on, as well as the NFL divisional games this weekend. Let's take a look at the NBA real quick. New Orleans, a 1-point favorite at Orlando, 228.5. The Hawks, coming off a big win over Dallas a couple of nights ago, they're a 3-point favorite at home versus the Knicks, who have played better. The Knicks right now in 7th place, Atlanta right behind them, 1 game back, but it seems like Atlanta's getting better right now. Murray and Young playing very well in the backcourt for Atlanta. The Knicks at 25-21 in 7th place, 229 the total there. Miami, a 1.5-point favorite at Dallas. And you always have to check with Dallas. First of all, they don't cover at all. They're one of the worst covering teams in the game. Christian Wood broke his finger. He's probably going to be out tonight. They're going to have Luka Doncic. Maxi Kleber still out. Hardaway out day-to-day. And McKinley Wright, the fourth, is out. Udonis Haslem is day-to-day for Miami. But that's a bit player for Miami. Veteran presence in Udonis Haslem. But they're 1.5-point favorites going into the game at Dallas. Miami has a tough time on the road. They're 25-21. They're 11-12 on the road. Dallas, meanwhile, is 16-7 at home. Might you take Dallas at 1.5? I don't know, but we'll see in the Best Bet segment, 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. Clippers, don't know if Paul George is going to play. Don't know if Kawhi Leonard's going to play. See what the injury report has for them right now. It says Luke Kennard's out right now and Devin Vassell out for San Antonio. So it looks like the Clippers are going to have all their guys a 7-point favorite at San Antonio. Don't underestimate San Antonio. They can score. We've already said that. Clippers don't cover a lot on the road. And San Antonio, when they're big underdogs at home, they seem to come up and play here a little bit. San Antonio, 7-point underdog against the Clippers. Denver, the best team in the NBA right now. They are 32-13. They're a game better than Memphis. Memphis has the Lakers tonight. We'll preview that in a second. 11 for Denver against Indiana, 239.5. Denver has not covered in their last 2 games. They barely beat up on Minnesota in overtime, or didn't get to overtime. It was close to overtime. And then they had Orlando had them on the ropes on Sunday. They came back and won that game. So the good teams are winning. They've got Jokic back. They're 21-3 at home right now. And they've got Indiana. They are 8-3, 8-4 out of conference. So they played pretty well against the Eastern Conference, 239.5. Of course, Tyrese Halliburton one of their big stars for the Pacers. He was injured, and he is going to return, or is he not going to return? Let's see if we got confirmation on that as well, too. Don't have confirmation on that. He's not on the injured list. We knew he missed a couple of games. They said he was going to be out a couple of weeks. But Denver 11, 239.5. Utah 7.5 against Brooklyn. Saw what Brooklyn did against the depleted Suns team Thursday night. 229.5 the total. Very few people are playing better than Lauri Markkanen right now. What a trade for Cleveland and Utah. You know, Cleveland got Donovan Mitchell, but Utah got Lauri Markkanen and Colin Sexton back, and that has helped Utah to a 24-24 record. The Markkanen leading the Jazz with nearly 25 a game, shooting 52%, 87% from the free throw line. Only Olynyk, the only injured player. Nobody injured for Brooklyn. Of course, Durant out for a few more weeks. 229.5 the total in that game for the Nets and the Jazz. Memphis, a 7-point favorite at the Lakers. 243 is the total. Memphis coming off their win the other night against Cleveland. Cleveland did not have Donovan Mitchell. Memphis had to come back. One of their off games at home that they've had, but they ended up coming back to win 115-114. Those of you that have Memphis minus 7.5, they had a 19-point lead at one point in that game. So Memphis 7 at the Lakers, 243. Sacramento Kings are 3.5 against the Oklahoma City Thunder. What do I always say about the Oklahoma City Thunder? When they're an underdog, they are one of the best underdog teams in the NBA. In fact, if not the best underdog team. I'll tell you this right now. The underdog for the Oklahoma City Thunder, I'm going to find it right now. Just give me a second. We'll keep talking about it. But Sacramento with the big win over the Lakers the other night against the spread, Oklahoma City 29-16 overall as an underdog. The Oklahoma City Thunder are near the top. They're 23-10 as an underdog. The Utah Jazz are the only team better than them at 20-7. And when Boston's an underdog, which has only been twice, they're 2-0. But 23-10, tied for the most wins of covering as an underdog with Orlando at 23. Of course, they get big spreads, does Orlando. But this is a different animal with Oklahoma City and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Now the total 241.5. We know the Lakers and the Kings, they go over. They didn't go over the other night. The Kings have gone over in 7 of their last 10 games, I believe was the number I read. So that's your NBA slate for this Friday night. Best bets at 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific. Let's hit the college basketball circuit right now. A couple of games to go over. First of all, let's wrap up Thursday. In the Big Ten, Michigan beat up on Rutgers 70-57. Rutgers, very good defense. They just don't score. And it just seemed like a gimme. Michigan State minus 2.5 last night. The under, if you had the under, you lost it late, 126.5. It ended up at 127, but Michigan State does cover the 2.5. Purdue, still the number 1 team in the country. They hold Minnesota to 39 points. That's not even a point a minute in college basketball. 61-39 over Minnesota. Zach Edey is more than content. He didn't have as good a game. They didn't need him. Only 12 points. Braden Smith, 19 points for the Boilermakers. 13 for Ola Joseph for Minnesota, but they get hammered 61-39, the final score in that Big Ten matchup. Maryland needed a win. They got one over Michigan, 64-58. Maryland now 12-6 on the year. Michigan 10-8. Jameer Young scored 26 for Maryland. And then Indiana rolled all over Illinois. Illinois cannot shoot free throws, but they got beat up. Too many turnovers. Indiana goes in as a 6.5-point underdog. They end up beating Illinois 80-65. The game barely stayed under 145.5, but Indiana, 6.5-point favorite. It went down to 6. One of my favorite plays yesterday. Indiana not only covers the 6.5, they roll on Illinois 80-65. All right, moving on. The Pac-12 last night, Arizona State beats up on USC 81-66. They cover the 8.5. They do not go over the 152. Arizona coach Tommy Lloyd decided he was going to shake the lineup up. So instead of his usual starters, he put Henderson in at center. Tubelis and Bala were there. Krista was there, and Ramey off the bench. Ramey started 16 points for him, 15 for Tubelis, a balanced attack. Pal Larson off the bench instead of starting. He had 15 for Arizona, 81-66 over USC. Arizona now 16-3, number 11 in the country. They've got a huge matchup against UCLA Saturday afternoon in Tucson. That's going to be a big game in the Pac-12. Washington State loses to Utah 77-63. Let me find it here. 77-63, Utah over Washington State behind Brandon Carlson, 28 points. 77-63, Washington State now 9-11, Utah 13-7 overall. Washington upsets Colorado 75-72. The Huskies have played well. Keon Brooks Jr. scored 25 points. Braxton Mia had a double-double. And Washington, as a 9-point underdog, beats Colorado 75-72. UCLA outscores Arizona State 44-27 in the second half. They were down by 5 at the half. Arizona State plus 5.5 or plus 5, whatever you had. I had it there. 74-62. They win over Arizona State. They end up covering 5. They stay under the total. The game ended up at 136. The total was 134. It did go over in that region. The game ended up 74-62. It was Jaime Jaquez Jr. had 9 points. He had a bad night shooting, but it was Tyga Campbell, 22, and Devin Singleton, 21, including 4 big threes to give UCLA the win, the cover, the over Arizona State. Arizona State now 15-4. They've got USC this weekend. UCLA, as we said, will go to Tucson in a huge matchup. UCLA number 5 against the number 11 Arizona Wildcats. Stanford, a big win over Oregon State. Stanford, not great this year. They've had their struggles, but Oregon State's been worse. 67-46. Spencer Jones and Michael Jones scored 18 apiece. Stanford broke through at the defensive end to earn its first Pac-12 conference win of the year. And then the WCC, the major upset in college basketball, the Gonzaga Bulldogs. They go down. They go down and go down hard to the Loyola Marymount Lions, 68-67. Loyola Marymount not only wins the game on the road, they were an 18-point underdog, 17, and ended up 158.5 the total. Did not get to the total. 68-67, the final score. 17-point underdog. Gonzaga's 75-game home winning streak is gone. We talked about UCLA and Notre Dame this week. 48 years ago this week, UCLA's 88-game winning streak was taken down by Notre Dame. Well, last night, Loyola Marymount ended Gonzaga's 75-game home winning streak, 68-67. Cam Shelton with the game winner with 15 seconds left and the upset. Other games in the WCC, 88-83 for Portland over USD. USF rolls over UOP, 78-57. St. Mary's, they're very good. Don't underestimate St. Mary's. They've got a 73-44 win over Pepperdine. And then Santa Clara, who's played very well this year. Santa Clara beats up on BYU 83-76. The Broncos are 16-5. Herb Sendek has them playing very well. For those of you that remember Herb Sendek from the ACC, he was at North Carolina State. But they're 16-5, and they're playing very well. Conference standings-wise, now Gonzaga has a loss. St. Mary's has overtaken them for first place. They have yet to play. They've got to play another game. They lost to Gonzaga at home by 2 points last time, but they're going to head up to Spokane to take on Gonzaga again later in the year. Santa Clara 4-2, Loyola Marymount now after their win 4-3, and BYU 4-3, and that's how the West Coast Conference looks. Big matchups on Saturday as well too. Big conference doings on Saturday. It'll be all day. The conference basketball, the ACC, the Big 12, the Big 10, the Big East. Oh, we have one Big East. Let's preview the games we have tonight. Big East, St. John's 3.5 versus Villanova. 150.5 is the total. Villanova struggling. St. John's just upset Connecticut as well. In the MAC conference, Kent State 8.5 versus Ball State. 139 the total. Ball State barely beat Central Michigan or Western Michigan the other night. And then Toledo, a 5-point favorite at Buffalo tonight as well in your MAC conference games. One Mountain West game to go over. New Mexico, they've had their struggles the last week and a half in conference, but they started off 14-0 under Richard Pitino. They're going up against a hot Boise State team. Boise State, a 2.5-point underdog, 145 the total. All right, let's hit the NFL. When we come back, 30 seconds, we'll talk about the NFL, give you the lines real quick, and I'll give you the best bet for this Friday, and then the Daily Post at 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Back in 30 seconds to wrap up the show. Again, thanks to Darren Smith. If you missed any of it, you can get the replays all day today until tip-off this afternoon in the NBA and face-offs in the NHL. I'm Vasi Vadaparty. Back in 30 seconds. All right, welcome back to the VPartySports podcast. You can reach me at VPartySports. Don't forget, on Saturday and Sunday, we'll be here 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. Best Bet segment will be posted at 11 a.m. Eastern on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And, of course, if you miss any information, you can get all the replays today and tomorrow as well, right up until tip-off at noon. Football doesn't start till 4:30 on the East Coast tomorrow. Kansas City, Jacksonville, the first ones. And then Philadelphia and the Giants on Saturday night at 8 o'clock. And then Cincinnati and Buffalo from Buffalo on Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. And then out here where I live in the Bay Area, the Dallas Cowboys come to visit the San Francisco 49ers. That game starts at 6:30 on the East Coast and 3:30 out here west. All right, 2 hockey games to go over before we get to the NFL real quick. The Pittsburgh Penguins, 145 versus Ottawa, 6.5 the total. Colorado, a 150 underdog, a 150 favorite at Vancouver, 6.5 the total. We know where Vancouver is in the standings. They are down near the bottom in the Pacific Division. They're just above San Jose, and they're above Anaheim in the Pacific Division. Overall in the conference, Vancouver near the bottom, San Jose, Arizona, Anaheim, Chicago, my Blackhawks right there at the bottom. And then Pittsburgh near the middle of the pack, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They're 8th in the conference in the league right now, division standings. They are 5th in the division, in the Metropolitan Division, behind Carolina, New Jersey, the Rangers, and Washington. 22, 15, and 7 for Pittsburgh. Ottawa, 20, 21, and 3. They played better in recent weeks. So that's a pretty good matchup for Ottawa and Pittsburgh. Colorado, Vancouver. The away goals are favored, minus 115, and the Grand Salami, 13.5. All right, you see the ticker going across. So let's get to the NFL real quick. I'll give you the lines, the updated lines. We'll have a full preview tomorrow. We'll give you all the injury reports as best as we can. 9 a.m. Eastern Saturday and 9 a.m. Eastern Sunday, 6 o'clock out here on the West Coast. Kansas City has stayed at 9 all week, 52.5 the total. It's come down a 0.5 point on the under. The weather's going to be a factor. Possibly it's going to be sunny, but it'll be cold in Kansas City. 4:30 Eastern, NBC. The Eagles, 7.5 versus the Giants, 8:15 on Fox. That stayed the same all week, 7.5 and 48 the total. Buffalo has gone up from 5 to 5.5 versus Cincinnati, 49 the total. That has come down from 49.5. The line has gone up from 5 to 5.5 as well. And then San Francisco has gone up from 3.5 to 4. People really like that defense in San Francisco. The total has come down from 46 to 46.5. We're in for some pretty good weather here in the Bay Area this weekend. So you might see some points. Dallas coming off the big win against Tampa Bay on Monday night. Of course, the 49ers second half demolition of the Seattle Seahawks. So that's your football preview for the weekend. A full slate of college basketball. Conference-wise, we've got every conference out there setting up for college basketball for Saturday. The ACC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, the American Conference, the Big East, the MAC, the Missouri Valley, the Mountain West, the Pac-12, the SEC, and the WCC, the conferences we follow. 9-4 for me in the NBA this week. 9, 10, 8, 12, 10 and 17 in college basketball. That's got to get better. And then 6-3 in hockey. Overall, 25 and 25 with a push this week, year to date, coming into the week, 112 and 84 going into week 3. So I'm pretty much 28 games over 500. That's profit. That's what you like to see. All right, back with you tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, and Sunday, 9 a.m. Eastern, a full NFL preview, NBA, NCAA, NHL action, the Daily Post at 11 a.m. Eastern. Sponsorships available. Contact me directly. Before we go, one best bet, the Lakers +7 tonight. They play well at home. Memphis has a tough time on the road. We know what Memphis did against Cleveland the other day at home, not covering the 7.5 with the Donovan Mitchell-less Cavaliers. I like the Lakers. They had a chance to win against the Kings 2 nights ago. Give me the Lakers +7 at home against the Memphis Grizzlies tonight. The rest of the best bets, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time. Don't forget, we have replays coming up following this show as well. I'm Vasi Vadaparty. Thank you very much for joining me for this Friday afternoon. Good luck with all your action. We will see you tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific, right here on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, and Facebook as well, too. Have a great afternoon. Good luck.